Richard Matheson was an American short story writer, novelist, and screenplay writer. He was born in New Jersey. Still a child, he was accepted as a writer and young poet by Brooklyn Eagle, a daily published newspaper in New York City. His professional writing career began in 1950 with a short stories publication in a science fiction magazine. The name of the story was Born of a Man and Woman. Some of Matheson's stories were filmed as well. He has written on real life problems of Americans. In his own words, I wrote about real people and real circumstances and real neighborhoods. In the story Button Button, button is the symbol of death. You will understand it the time you read it. Let us begin with the story now. Button Button. The package was lying by the front door, a cube-shaped carton sealed with tape, their name and address printed by hand: Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Lewis, 217E, 37th Street, New York. New York 10016. Noma picked it up, unlocked the door, and went into the apartment. It was just getting dark. After she had put the lamb chops in the broiler, she sat down to open the package. In the first paragraph, we understand that there is one character. Her name is Noma. She is Arthur's wife, and her address is given in the first paragraph. Broiler here means a grill or an oven or a stove. Let's begin the second paragraph. Inside the carton was a push-button unit fastened to a small wooden box. A glass dome covered the button. Noma tried to lift it off, but it was locked in place. She turned the unit over and saw a folded piece of paper scotch taped to the bottom of the box. She pulled it off. Mr. Stewart will call on you at 8 p.m. In the second paragraph, it is told that Noma was cooking something for the dinner, and she opens the package. At the bottom of the package, there was a message for her and for her husband that a person, Mr. Stewart, will call on you, will come to see you at 8 in the evening. Noma put the button unit beside her on the couch. Couch means bed. She reread the typed note, smiling. A few moments later, she went back into the kitchen to make the salad. The doorbell rang at 8 o'clock. I'll get it. Get it means I'll go and see who is at the door. Noma called from the kitchen. Arthur was in the living room reading. There was a small man in the hallway, corridor. He removed his hat as Noma opened the door. Mrs. Lewis, he inquired politely. Yes. Mr. Stewart. Oh yes, Noma repressed a smile. She was sure now it was a sales pitch. A sales pitch means a business temptation. "May I come in?" asked Mr. Stewart. "I'm rather busy," Norma said. "Don't you want to know what it is?" Norma turned back. Mr. Stewart's tone had been offensive. "No, I don't think so," she replied. "It could prove very valuable," he told her. "Monetarily?" she challenged. Monetarily basically means in terms of money. Mr. Stewart nodded. "Monetarily," he said. "Monetarily, financially." It shows that Norma was slightly interested in getting money. Norma frowned. Frowning basically is a gesture that when you are offended, you frown. She didn't like his attitude. "What are you trying to sell?" she asked. "I'm not selling anything," he answered. Arthur came out of the living room. "Something wrong?" Mr. Stewart introduced himself. "Oh, the..." Arthur pointed toward the living room and smiled. "What's that gadget anyway?" Now here in the conversation, we understand that there are three characters in the story. Norma, who is Mrs. Lewis, Arthur Lewis, who is Norma's husband, and the third character is Mr. Stewart, who has an offer for them. And what is the exact offer? Let's go ahead and read. Get at page 2 now. "It won't take long to explain," replied Mr. Stewart. "May I come in?" "If you are selling anything," Arthur said. Mr. Stewart shook his head. "I'm not." Arthur looked at Norma. "Up to you," she said. "Up to you" means it depends totally upon you whether you want to allow him to come in or not. He hesitated. "Well, why not?" he said. They went into the living room and Mr. Stewart sat in Norma's chair. He reached into an inside coat pocket and withdrew a small sealed envelope. Envelope is, in fact, a folded, it's a kind of, little folder in which you place your letters, seal it and post it. "Inside here is a key to the Bell unit dome," he said. He set the envelope on the chair side table. "The bell is connected to our office." "What's it for?" asked Arthur. In this paragraph, Mr. Stewart tells Mr. and Mrs. Lewis that here I'm placing an envelope, inside is a key, and with this key you can open the Bell unit dome. "What's it for?" asked Arthur. "If you push the button," Mr. Stewart told him, "somewhere in the world someone you don't know will die, in return for which you will receive a payment of $50,000. Norma stared at the small man. He was smiling. "What are you talking about?" Arthur asked him. Mr. Stewart looked surprised. "But I have just explained," he said. "Is this a practical joke?" asked Arthur. "Practical joke is a joke that causes embarrassment to others." "Not at all. The offer is completely genuine." "You are not making sense," Arthur said. "You expect us to believe?" "Who do you represent?" demanded Norma. "Who do you represent here means that for which company or firm are you working? Mr. Stewart looked embarrassed. He was slightly, disturbed. His confidence was shaken. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to tell you that, he said. However, I assure you the organization is of international scope. I think you better leave. You'd better leave means here you had better leave. You had better do this or that. It is a way to suggest someone to do something, to advise someone to do something. Arthur said, standing. Mr. Stewart rose, of course. And take your button unit with you. Are you sure you wouldn't care to think about it for a day or so? Arthur picked up the button unit and the envelope and thrust them into Mr. Stewart's hands. He walked into the hall and pulled open the door. This is a gesture given by author, of course. He wants Mr. Stewart leave at once. I'll leave my card, said Mr. Stewart. He placed it on the table by the door. When he was gone, Arthur tore it in half and tossed the pieces onto the table. Norma was still sitting on the sofa. What do you think it was? She asked. I don't care to know, he answered. She tried to smile but couldn't. Are not you curious at all? Curious mean in suspense? No, he shook his head. After Arthur had returned to his book, Norma went back to the kitchen and finished washing the dishes. Why won't you talk about it? Norma asked. Arthur's eyes shifted as he brushed his teeth. He looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Doesn't it intrigue you? Intrigue means arouse curiosity. It offends me. Offends me means it makes me angry, Arthur said. Dear students, that's all for today. These first two paragraphs, we have come across three characters, and this is just the beginning of a conflict. Arthur Lewis and Mrs. Lewis, they are not very rich. They are living in a humble flat, and they are hardly making their both ends meet. Suddenly, there comes an offer in their lives with a very big question. The offer is that they have been given a gadget, and if they push the button that is inside the gadget, someone somewhere in the world they don't know would die. Now the big question is, to be or not to be, that is the question. This offer is smart for Norma because Norma wants to improve her life. You will soon read in the story that whatever I'm telling you, that's the truth. Whereas Arthur has very high moral standards. He's of the view that man should stick to the principle and should never do anything that is immoral. And the big question is, should we kill a person for money or we shouldn't? For Norma, it's a big offer. For Arthur, it's a question of moral values. Keep thinking over it. Read these 2 pages. These pages and the language on them will help you understand American writing style. As you know, Richard Matheson was an American writer.